Assalamualaikum everyone and good evening to the viewers today. Welcome to the National Economic Forum 2020 where we talk about post-budget talk. This is brought to you by the Economic Society of IIUM. My name is Ahmad Hazmi and I will be your moderator for today. Thank you all for participating in this live forum session. Today we have our most beloved guest to join me, as you can see here. And the first guest for today is Professor Ahmad Imran, accounting lecturer from IIUM. And the second one is Dr. Yasir Hasnor, an economist. And last but not least, we also have Mr. Arif Najmi, an officer from the KPKT. Okay, now we'll be talking about our focus for today is on the budget that has been laid out by the government. And as a moderator, I'll be guiding you through this process. And we have a short period of time today, so I'm going to break this into four distinct parts. And the first one is on the budget itself generally, and the second one is on the budget system in Malaysia. The third one is the difference between last year's and this year's budget, and lastly, the budget on the housing. Okay, now we'll be going through the first process, which I will be asking Mr. Ahmad Imran. And okay, Professor, uh, can you explain about what budget is and how it could help an organization or the country to operate better?
Thank you, moderator, for giving me this opportunity to join this forum. So I will start the definition of budget, which is defined by the Hilton. It means that it is a detailed plan expressed in quantitative terms that specify how resources will be acquired and used during the specific period of time. It shows that budget can be made for a person, a group of people, a business, a government, or just about anything else that has capability to make and spend money. It is short-term finance planning tool in order for them to monitor their cash inflow and cash outflow for that particular period. That is a general definition of budget. Now, for today's discussion, I would like to focus on the government budget. According to the Article 99, subsection 1 of the Federal Constitution, it defines a budget as a statement of the estimated receipt and expenditure of the Federation for the year. Public sector budgeting concerns how the government plans for its revenue and expenditure at the federal, state, and local government to cover the needs of developmental programs and projects. It consists of the overall planning process which requires the controlling officer to monitor the efficiency of each ministry activities. It is difficult to understand, but basically the budget is a financial plan that consists of expenditure and revenue and also financial data regarding the program that will be executed in the future in order to achieve the public objective and goal. Budget will help the country to operate better by using the budget as an instrument for planning and management of resources to ensure the objectivity are achieved as planned. It will help the government to control the cost and the use of resources. The carefully planned budget will strengthen the internal control system and encourage the public sector to spend money cost effectively and reach the government's goal. Besides that, the budget also a communication tool which expresses the goals, aims, and operational expectations to the very operational level. This is because there will be allocation of funds to each ministry which each ministry needs to execute the activity according to the government's main goal. Lastly, the budget is a tool for them to evaluate the performance of each ministry. This is because at the end of the period, the government will compare the planned budget and actual outcome. By doing this, it will ensure that all planned activity will be carried out by each ministry and the resources are used within its allocation. Back to
Okay,
moderator.
thank you, Professor Ahmad Imran, for the explanation. And now I have another question actually for Professor Imran. Okay, do you have the budget process or the budget flow in Malaysia? You have an explanation for that?
Yes, I have explanation on that. So basically, all budgeting process in Malaysia are carried out every 2 years since 2002. Activities are planned for the budget year and the year following the budget year. So, for example, in preparation for the budget 2018, the agency will re-evaluate 2017 activities and plan their activities for the year 2018 and as well as 2019. There are about five sub-processes for budgeting in Malaysia, which are: first, request and submission of budget proposals; second, examination of budget proposal; and third, budget consultation; and fourth and fifth is the presentation and approval of budget. So it started in January. Basically, the Minister of Finance will call for a budget proposal and initiate the budget process, which will be circulated to each agency. This will be a guideline for them to prepare the budget. Then, the National Budget Office, which is under the Ministry of Finance, will determine the indicative ceiling for agencies, which become the benchmark for them in the estimation of operating expenditure. Indicative ceiling is the maximum amount for the proposed operating expenditure for each agency. When the agencies and ministry receive the circular from the Treasury, the various departments in each ministry need to prepare the budget input, and based on the budget input, the Budget Implementation Committee will prepare the budget draft, which it will submit to the Treasury in March. After submission and completion of the budget proposal, the National Budget Office will examine the proposed budget with the indicative ceiling. It is to make sure that the allocation of financial resources are based on the government long-term plan and the program are appropriate and congruent to the government objective. For the new proposed program, the budget office will examine the new program to make sure that the program is compliant with the 5-year development plan and consider the government financial position, whether they have enough resources or not. After examining the proposal, the budget officer will prepare the assessment on the proposal, justification for accepting and rejecting the proposal. Then the assessment will be presented to the Ministry of Finance for approval. Okay, before the presenting in the Parliament, the Ministry of Finance will call for memorandum from stakeholders, including NGO, university, and various industries, for them to provide the issues and recommended strategy to solve their issues. The issue will be scrutinized by the Minister of Finance will and then listed and to be discussed further. Based on the group discussion with the affected stakeholder, the ministry then form an area that should be focused on the budget. Beside the affected stakeholder, information from World Bank and International Money Fund meetings are also taken into account, since it shows the condition of the global economy that will affect the Malaysia economy. Lastly, the budget will be presented in Parliament and will be debated in each ministry's allocation. After the budget is approved by the Senate, the budget will be forwarded to His Royal Highness the Yang di-Pertuan Agong for royal assent and gazettal. After the gazettal, the Treasury will issue a warrant to the Accountant General, which they can utilize the consolidated fund. Then, General will issue allocation warrant to each controlling officer in all agencies, allowing them to utilize the approved expenditure.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Professor Imran, for that clear clarification on the budget process in Malaysia. I hope the viewers can now understand how the flow of doing the budget in our country.
Okay,
Now,
all right.
let's move on to Dr. Yasir Hasnor, and a Malaysian economist. Okay, now I have a question for you. So, what is the difference between budget, the last year's budget 2020 and this year's budget 2021, and what is their current goal for this year's budget and why they changed the key areas? Okay, please proceed, Dr. Yasir Hasnor.
Thank you very much, moderator, and also Professor Imran for the very clear explanation on budgeting in general. So I think something that most people will know based on what they read on the newspapers and all that is that this year's budget is the largest amount allocated so far. It's around 20 billion more than budget 2020. And even after budget 2020 was revised recently, it's still around 8 billion ringgit more. And it's even more than 2019's budget. And that one was around 315 billion, I believe. So some people might question why exactly the budget was increased, but I think that one is also obvious because of the pandemic recently, and a lot of people lost their jobs, businesses had to stop operating, so obviously the government has to spend a lot more compared to before. And some of the key areas for this year, I believe, are the basically to ensure the well-being of the rakyat. So the government has planned certain initiatives for fresh graduates, for companies, and so on to make sure that graduates will have the necessary skills to enter the job market and that companies can continue paying their employees well. Other other initiatives include the additional tax reliefs for such as lifestyle tax relief, also medical treatment tax relief. All these have been increased compared to last year's budget. There's another initiative that I think people should know is that individuals who have recently lost their jobs can withdraw from their EPF1 account, 500 ringgit per month, so that they can continue paying their bills and whatnot while they're searching for a new job. And another last key area I think is the allocation to combat COVID and also to help stabilize the country and the economy by purchasing PPE, COVID test kits and other medical equipment. So I guess you could say the main goal of this year's budget is to stabilize the economy and also help it grow again in the future. However, I think as all things, there's a good and bad side to it. And the bad side, or like the most controversial part of this year's budget, is probably the fact that JASA was revived recently. Because as you all know, during Pakatan Harapan time, they abolished JASA, the JASA department. However, last year when the backdoor government came, they decided to revive JASA and allocated around 81 million ringgit, I believe. 81 million ringgit, yes. And it has caused a lot of outrage from the netizens and whatnot, because after all, we could have used this money to help the citizens a lot more, or give a bit more bonus to the frontliners. Thankfully, this allocation was cut approximately in half, so now it's only 40.5 million ringgit. Whether it's a good or bad, still, I think it's up to the government to decide, though. And I think that's all for my side.
All right, thank you, Dr. Yasir Hasnul, for that bitter view on the budget. But it's okay. We share all of everyone's view. No judgment here. Okay. Now let's move on to Mr. Alif Najmi, an officer from the KPKT. Okay. My question is, due to your expertise in affordable housing, okay, my question is, what do you think about the budget allocation for, the housing area and for KPKT itself? What do you think about this, Mr. Alif Najmi?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hazmi, as our moderator for today. Okay, as we know that the 2021 budget is already passed in the parliament, and there is some good news for the housing and local government ministry, or we can say KPKT. Okay, before I give my personal opinion on the budget that the government gives to KPKT, let's recap the budget allocation first. I will tell a few of them that I remember. Okay, government already gave a huge allocation of budget for KPKT compared to last year, which is 5.368 billion ringgit. Okay, so in order to serve a comfortable and quality house, the government allocated 1.2 billion for this purpose. This amount cover 500 million ringgit to build 14 units of house under program Perumahan Rakyat Malaysia and 315 million to build 3,000 units of house under program Rumah Mesra by SPMB. Okay, so in addition, the allocation also cover 125 million ringgit for maintenance of low cost and middle cost housing, and also for repairing the houses that are involved in natural disasters such as flood and earthquake. So next, 310 million ringgit also provided for perumahan penjawat awam Malaysia. Okay, in another perspective, the government also gives the exemption of stamp duty for letter of ownership and agreement for the first house under value of 500,000 ringgit. So based on some of the budget above, from my personal opinion, I think the government is doing good. I'm not biased on any side of politics, but during this hard time of pandemic COVID-19, the budget allocation is quite higher if we compare to the last year budget for KPKT. So even in the unstable of economics nowadays, the government still can afford to give a huge amount for housing sector in Malaysia. This is very important to ensure the objective of KPKT to make sure all Malaysians have their own house in future is achieved. I'm also attracted by the government incentive when they introduce rent to own scheme, or we can say RTO scheme, to Malaysians that have unstable finance to own their own house. This scheme will give an option to qualify Malaysian under this category to have their own house under Perumahan Rakyat Malaysia and get financial assistance by financial institution until maturity period, which is 2 years, with low cost monthly rent. After 2 years, they will be examined whether they are qualified to have full ownership for that house. This is a very good move for the government to make sure that people who fail to get loan from bank in order to get their own house by working hard to make sure their finance are stable. So that's all I think.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alif Najmi, for the insightful explanation on the education. Okay, now I think we have every guest talk on this forum. Okay, but I have one more thing about the budget. What is your individual thoughts on budget 2021? Do you agree or disagree with the budget? Okay, I will give Professor Ahmad Imran first to give his opinion on this.
Alright. Overall, I think budget 2021 is a good budget since the government has allocated the 3 billion on COVID vaccine and another 1 billion to prepare in facing the third wave infection in the future. Besides that, they also allocate another 24 million to address issues pertaining to mental health, including strengthening the mental health, violence and injury prevention and substance abuse programs. Since we have a CMCO from March 2020, there are many violence cases because people cannot go outside, stress, and people who are self-employed will have financial problem because they have lost their financial sources due to unable to go work and sell their product. Government has allocated 5.3% from the total allocation expenditure to the COVID-19 fund. Hopefully, by doing this, it will reduce the COVID-19 cases that lately keeps increasing.
Okay, thank you, Professor Imran, for the opinion. Okay, next, maybe Dr. Yassi, do you have your opinion on this budget?
Thank you, Mr. Hazmi. I think I have the same line of thought as Professor Imran. I do think the budget is quite good, even though I might have sounded bitter just now with the JASA education. But overall, I think it does um, achieve its goals. It helps achieve the goals of ensuring the rakyat's well-being, because like there's initiatives to make sure that everyone can keep paying their bills. It has initiatives for the fresh graduates, also has funds for COVID and whatnot. So I think honestly, it's actually quite a good budget. Even though the government hasn't had much time to prepare for it, they still did really well, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yase, for his opinion. Okay, last but not least, Mr. Alif Najmi, do you have your opinion on this budget?
Okay, so since my internet connection is not very stable, so I will make it short. Okay, for my personal opinion, I think that 2021 budget is quite good if you compare to the last year budget. And during this hard time, I think all the budget that government provide is overall is good because they cover almost in all sector that involved in Malaysia. So personally, I will support the budget, and because of the good move from the government for housing sector in Malaysia, I think there's no problem. So I think that's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alif, for your opinion. Thank you, everyone, for your honest and insightful opinions on this budget. Okay, I think our time is almost up, and everyone have shared their thoughts, personal thoughts on the budget. Okay, thank you for joining this forum to our viewers. We really appreciate your interest in this very important issue. And if you have any questions for our panelists for today, you can ask right after this forum, and we will provide a private chat for you to ask the panelists for today. I hope this forum helps you gain positive knowledge on the budget. And I am Ahmad Hazmi as your moderator for today. And thank you everyone, and thank you for the panelists and also the viewers. We'll see you again next time. Goodbye. Assalamualaikum.